Hey, welcome to the very first edition of Cooking with Carper for Foods 1. Today we're going to be working on knife skills and starting to highlight and practice some of our food safety techniques. The lab I'm going to demonstrate now with cutting and chopping and handling of a knife is going to lead into our first lab that we generally do in class, which is our stir fry lab. That recipe can be found online on Google Classroom. It will be posted with this week's assignments. So check that out. Feel free to try it out at home. I'd love to see pictures of how your product turns out. This is a crowd pleaser. It is a fan favorite. Oftentimes in class, after all the different things that we've made, this is the lab that I have the most students telling me that they've gone home and made for their family. So I hope you enjoy. So for this one, let's get going with our knife skills. So let's get things out. Here's an assortment of knives that I have at home, and I will talk through these one by one. When it comes to using knives in the kitchen, there are lots to choose from, all very simple, but just like anything else, the more you know the tools that you're using, the better you're going to be with them. So let's look at these knives one by one. We'll start off with our general chef's knife. Your general shape, long, comes to a nice point, has a general curve to the blade. Our spine is relatively thin and small. We have our handle with our bolster right at the top. Sometimes this handle can be more transitioned and curved for a smoother finish from blade to handle. Other times you have one that's like this where it's a little bit more abrupt. Here at the base of the blade you have what's called the heel. This heel is going to be what extends the blade below your fingers. This is one of the things that makes chef's knives unique to other knives because you have this wide space. The reason for this is it allows you to bring the blade all the way to the cutting board before your fingers hit. This allows you to make complete cuts as you are working. As we look more at the handle, you can see this particular chef's knife has these rivets. That's going to be holding the handle material onto the blade. That's because this knife is a full tang knife, meaning that the blade metal runs all the way to the top of our handle, or you say the bottom of our handle. Okay? Whether you have a full tang knife or this example of a knife would be a partial tang. It's only going to go down halfway through the handle. It's usually a cheaper knife. It still can be good quality in terms of cutting surface, but you're paying for less metal, and so it's a cheaper knife. Okay? Usually higher quality knives are going to be full tang. Okay? This is an example of my personal chef's knife that I use at home. It's a little bit fancier. I spent a little extra money on it just to have something nice. It has kind of a beveled surface. It's Damascus steel, so it has a nice little pattern to the metal. It's really sharp, easy to hone, easy to maintain. It is full tang with a nice wooden handle. It's very comfortable. It's relatively light, easy to handle, easy to hold. Okay. As we are still talking about chef's knives, we can get into various types of chef's knives. So this is a santoku, and this is also a santoku. So you can see there's a variety of shapes to the same style of knife. Santokus are really good for chopping vegetables. You can see how it has a little bit more of a gradual blade, blunted point. So this one's kind of more of a kind of middle of the road between a santoku and a French knife, chef's knife, because it has more of that point. Whereas this particular santoku does not have so much of a pointed tip. It's more blunted. It's meant to kind of stay close to your cutting board as you are chopping and working. Our next knife is a bread knife. We know this because of the serrations along the blade. This allows us to cut through crusts of bread without having to press too hard. So we use more of the sawing motion to allow those teeth to do the work. Some people like to use serrated blades on other foods, things that are particularly fragile or delicate, like tomatoes. again for the purpose of you're not having to press as hard. But that's up to you and your choice. I tend not to like serrated blades unless it's for bread itself. They're just not as easy to maintain and take care of and to keep really sharp. Our next knife is a slicing knife. Very similar to the bread knife. Hold them up in comparison. Except for the slicing knife has a smooth blade. So this is a really good knife for large cuts of meat or things where you're needing to make long, smooth cuts and slices. Towards our smaller end, we have a paring knife. Again, very small, meant to be used for delicate cuts and tasks. Easy to control, easy to maneuver. And then lastly, we have our utility knife. This is a medium-sized knife, larger than our paring knife, but of course smaller than our chef's knife, but still good for a variety of tasks. Some people really like using utility knives just because they're a little bit smaller, a little easier to handle, not as intimidating. But again, if you notice, there's not a heel on this particular knife. So in terms of making cuts and complete cuts, you have to be a little bit more conscious of what you're doing. When it comes to utility knives, there's a wide range of styles and sizes. So choose what you like, whatever is comfortable. Okay. We'll move these off to the side, and we're going to focus on our chef's knife, our French knife, and how to handle and how to hold a knife. When it comes to holding a knife, there is a wrong and right way to do it. Now within that right way, there is some variations that you can maintain, but I'm going to try to push you to use and hold the knife accurately. Okay? So first thing you're going to do, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, is you're going to pinch with your thumb and index finger just above the bolster. So you're kind of holding on to the blade, not necessarily the handle. With most knives, this should be about the balanced point of your blade. You should have good control and balance from the blade side to the handle side by pinching here. Okay, this is going to give you the most control over your knife. Okay? From here, the knife's going to sit in your palm. Okay? If you line this up kind of with your arm, and then place your fingers just on the bottom of the handle. Okay? Do not reach all the way around and touch your hand. This is not a good hold. Okay? If you're holding a knife like this, you're not looking to do culinary arts and chopping up veggies and produce. Okay? This is a hold for something else. So, loose grip, don't get too crazy. Fingers just at the bottom of your handle. It should be kind of lined up with your hand and your arm. When you're holding like this, now if you haven't done this before, it might feel kind of strange, but it should feel relatively good. Okay? It should be comfortable. You shouldn't be straining. Don't squeeze the knife too hard. Allow it to move. Okay? A good knife is not going to require a whole lot of effort put forth on you in order to do the cutting. Okay? Allow the blade and allow the knife to do the work. Okay? If this feels a little strange, you can kind of come down a little bit on the handle and pinch kind of on the side or top and bottom, however feels best. But what I don't ever want to see students do, and a lot of people do this, is as they're cutting, they bring their finger up high onto the spine. Okay? Oftentimes when people do this, it's because they're holding really low on the handle, and as they're cutting, they're finding they don't have much pressure and control on their food. And so they pop that finger up on top of the spine to move the pressure higher up, closer to that balanced point. That way they have more control. Now when you do this, then you're putting all this strain on your hand and your finger, and you're going to tire out faster using your knife. So move your whole hand up closer to the middle of the knife where you're going to be doing the cutting. Okay? It'll feel a lot better this way. Okay? Now the proper way to cut with the knife, now that we know how to hold it, is going to be one of two general cuts. Okay? Our first one is going to be what's called a rock chop. The ideal rock chop is that we are always maintaining contact with our cutting board while we are moving the knife up and down. Okay? So the idea, tip of the knife on the cutting board, kind of up high. This is going to be our axis point. Okay? So just like working a lever, so physics 101, by keeping this point here on the cutting board, we reduce the amount of work we have to apply to the knife to apply force, cutting force to our food. Okay? But we're not just doing an up and down motion. That's not going to utilize the knife as much. We're also going to do a forward and backwards motion while going up and down. So what that's going to create is a circular motion that's going to activate more of the cutting surface of our knife. Okay? I prefer to press down and away as I cut. So keeping the tip of the knife on the cutting board, I go down and forward, up, down and forward. So I get this circular motion with my knife. Okay? Always bringing the heel of the knife down to the cutting board. Okay? If you also notice, I'm standing straight with my cutting board, but my knife is at a 45-degree angle to my left. Okay? This keeps my arm in a comfortable position, so I'm not tucking my elbow into my side, limiting my movement. Okay? Elbow out, cutting at an angle, up and down in a circular motion. Okay? This is the main cut that we're going to be using as we're working through our produce. Okay? In general, in the kitchen, this is what you're going to be using the most. Okay? If you have a larger food item, you might have to come up higher, but the same idea is going to be utilized where we're pressing down and forward at the same time to maximize cutting surface of our blade. Okay? With our left hand, we always keep our fingers curled. Okay? Think of making a claw with our hand, and this claw is then applying pressure onto our food, holding it in place. Okay? With that finger curled, we can then place our knife next to our finger, and it creates a nice space to which we can guide our knife and not cut our fingers. Okay? But you have to keep your fingers curled. If you have your fingers out like this, all of a sudden you are at risk at hurting yourself. Okay? So fingers curled. The more kind of curl you get, the more gap, if you can see, between my fingertips and the blade itself. I'm touching with my knuckle, but my fingers are not in the way of the knife. If you've ever watched a cooking show where a chef has been chopping things up and they look up to the camera to cut things without having to stop, that's what they're doing, and that's how they're able to do it. It takes practice, it takes confidence, but the more you force yourself to do it, the easier it becomes and the more skilled you'll be. So let's go ahead and get out our veggies that we're going to be utilizing for our stir-fry lab. For the stir-fry, we're going to be utilizing a combination of vegetables known in the French as a mirepoix. So it's celery, carrot, and onion. We're going to be cutting these up in various ways to demonstrate and utilize some different cutting techniques, and then we'll be using that in our stir-fry. So first things first, we need to make sure that our produce is properly washed. So you see with my celery, there's some dirt that likes to sit at the bottom of the celery when you pull it off of the stalk. That's always a good idea to clean on the inside and on the outside. For our carrots, we're going to wash and we're going to peel these. And then with our onions, now this is a scallion, so it's a small onion that comes together in these papery cloves, kind of like garlic. So you break them apart, we're going to take off the skin, and then we're going to dice these down. So let's get started working on this. I've gone ahead and got a bowl that I like to use as trash. I keep this next to me as I'm working just because it's an easy way of dumping things I'm going to get rid of rather than having to go to the trash can all the time. And it's a little bit more sterile this way also. Okay. So, first thing we're going to cut up is our celery. For this, we're going to be slicing the celery. Slice is a full cut of our vegetable that's going to show the entire profile of our vegetable. Okay? So when we're done, each cut should show this nice curved arch that celery has. Okay? So again, holding the knife correctly, pinching just above the bolster, placing the fingers at the bottom of the handle, holding loosely. Now we can do our rock chop. We're going to take off the bottom and the top, which tend to be kind of dried out. Okay? So tip of the knife high on the cutting board, one smooth motion down and forward. Okay? The waste goes in the trash bowl, turn it around. Waste goes in the trash bowl. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're simply going to slice this down. Now, thinking of myself and what I like for the stir fry, this is a pretty wide piece of celery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it all the way down the center. I'm going to split it in half, and then I'll go ahead and slice it. Okay? Because it's curved on one side, think about safety, think about ease. Flip it over so that the curve is at the top. That way this doesn't shimmy and move around on you. Okay? Quick little slice down the center. Okay, I'll set one side off. Now we're going to go ahead and slice this. Again, tip the knife high on the cutting board. I actually want to have my food down by the heel. This is where our cutting power is, and this is where our hand is. So it makes more sense that we have more control and more power here. Okay? I oftentimes see students start to move their food high up close to the tip of the knife because they want it away from their hand. And they think that they're going to have more control if they're just kind of using the end of the knife. But the further you move away from your hand where you're cutting, the less power you have. Okay? So tip of the knife high, food low by the heel, left hand curled, sitting on top of the celery. That way the knuckles stick out to guide your hand. And we simply start working in that circular motion. Don't go too wide with your cuts. Celery tends to be one of those veggies that people don't like to really chomp down on, but it adds really nice, fresh flavor to your food. Okay? You see our first kind of pile of celery coming together. The general size and width of your celery that we're kind of shooting for this stir fry. Okay? Now again, as you get more comfortable, you can pick up the speed and really kind of work through food pretty quickly. So that's half the stock, and then we'll get through this second one quick. When you get to the end, really make sure you kind of slow down, be careful. With that all chopped up, I'm going to grab another bowl to put this in. So our celery, I'm going to place into this container so we can save it for later. Our next vegetable we're going to move on to is our carrot. Now we've washed this. Now the next thing we need to do is to peel it. So I have kind of a standard peeler here. Kind of large, easy to handle. Real simple to use when you know what you're doing. Okay? Best thing to do with the peeler is be confident with your motions. If you're slow and you're not kind of making quick motions, it doesn't tend to work as well. Okay? So holding the carrot in your left hand if you're ready. And we're going to peel the bottom 3/4 of the carrot first, and then we'll flip and do the other side. Okay, so peeler flat on your carrot, one smooth motion. Don't go slow, kind of go quick with that motion. That's going to utilize the blades that are on that peeler better than if you were to go slow. Okay, doesn't take much to get that skin off. Turn it around, and we do the last portion. Always peel away from yourself. That way you don't run the risk of catching a little bit of your fingers. Okay, just like that. Our carrot is peeled, so we can toss those into the trash. If you have any gardens at home, this is great product for a compost pile, so you can save that. Now for the carrot, what we're going to be doing is cutting this into julienne style. So we're going to take off our top and bottom, and then we're going to be cutting this into long matchstick shaped pieces. So again, holding our knife, tip of the knife high up on the cutting board, through the bottom, and now through the root or the stem side. Okay. Carrot's really going to test to see your handling of the knife because it's a really hard vegetable. If you don't have a good firm grip on your knife, and if you're not using the techniques correctly, the carrot's going to roll around and it's going to jump off the board real easy. Okay. Now, again, we're cutting this into square pieces. We're taking a round vegetable and making it square. So, first thing we want to do is cut this in half lengthwise. Place the knife where you're going to cut. Okay. Don't press too hard, just kind of get it into the carrot a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to drop the point to our cutting board. Okay. Like so. As we're doing that, we're entering the carrot a little bit. So now we have kind of a groove that holds the knife in place. Okay? With that done, left hand flat on the spine, pressing the heel down into the carrot. At this point, our tip has come up, but our knife is in our carrot. So now it's firm, it's in place. We're going to have a safer cutting opportunity here. Again, with our hand on the spine of the knife, I'm just going to kind of reach around and pinch the carrot. And using the pressure of my left hand, again, I'm going to drop the point to the cutting board and then drop the heel to the cutting board. This is going to give you the safest, slow, methodical approach cutting through the carrot. That way it doesn't roll and doesn't hurt yourself. Now that we have a nice flat surface, we can flip those carrots over and now they're not rolling. So now it's going to be a lot easier to cut from this point on. Okay? Now again, we're looking for square pieces, so we have to take off these round sides first. So, right side, place the knife where you want to cut, tip to heel, all the way to the cutting board. Flip it around, same thing. Place where you want it to be, tip, heel. Okay. Now, these are not perfectly square pieces, I understand that, but we'll be able to cut these down still into a relative julienne shape, and we'll still be able to use these. These are not waste. Okay. Now that we have this kind of square, rectangular carrot, we're going to slice this down into planks. Okay. Again, tip, heel. Now we have these 3 planks, and now we'll slice these planks down into our long carrot sticks or julienne style cuts. Right. Now, of course, these are far too long to be putting in a stir fry, so we're going to cut these down into shorter pieces, and that's a little bit more appealing and appetizing. You can decide how large you want those to be. Okay. We're going to do the same thing with our kind of scrap pieces. Cut those down and into our pile. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that with this, do the same thing with this other half, but we'll speed it up a little bit. Okay, now our carrots are cut into our julienne style. Again, long matchstick pieces. This will give us good texture. Keep the carrots relatively thicker so that they don't get too soft as they cook, but we still know they're there. We'll toss in our carrots into our container. Now the nice thing about mirepoix in general with celery and carrots is look at the color contrast. That light green color with that nice orange. It's a really appealing aesthetics when it gets into our food and in our dish. So I'll make it look more appetizing, and it's going to taste really good too. So now let's go do our onions. So again, like I said, I'm using kind of a smaller scallion, not scallion, but shallot. This is kind of what I had on hand, so this is what I'm going to use. Using a larger onion would be great as well. You can use a purple onion or a red onion, white or yellow, whatever it is that you enjoy. If you would like to use scallion, I keep scallion growing on my kitchen window. These grow really well in just a jar with a little bit of water to keep the roots moist. If you want to cut up one of these, the whole thing can be used. You're still getting that onion flavor. It'll go really well with the dish. First thing we need to do is we need to get this papery skin off. And so the same process can be used, like I said before, with the larger onions. What we're going to do is take off the root side and the stem side. And then from here we can take this papery skin off relatively easily. Okay, so same process. Take off the top, take off the bottom. From here you can cut this in half, cut side to cut side, and it's going to open up those layers so you can see what it is that you're doing. It makes it really easy to take that papery skin off. There we go. I've got this other one I'm going to do real quick. Again, it's nice and opened up. I can take off that skin. From here, what we're going to be doing is dicing our onion. So, first thing we're going to do, we're going to set our onion so our cut sides are to our left and our right. What I'm going to do is do one slice horizontal through our onion, but I'm not going to go all the way through. I'm going to leave this little bit still intact to hold it together. Okay? So I've cut from the right to the left, my right to my left. Now I'm going to turn this 90 degrees so those cuts are towards me. That connected piece is away from me. And now what I'm going to do is make these little vertical cuts through my onion. Okay, just using the tip of the knife, and I just kind of flick the knife through. Now I turn it back the way it was, and now I can simply slice my onion, and it falls apart in these nice little pieces. That lasts a little bit. I'm just going to quick chop, and then I can kind of blitz through the rest of this onion relatively quickly with that style of cut, or that technique for cutting onion. Now, of course, this is not the only way to cut an onion. This is a lot of the way that you see online or on TV shows for chopping up onion. It's because it does a lot of the prep work before you slice it. Otherwise, you have pieces of onion that have to go through and rock chop over and over again to get the size that you're shooting for. And turn it sideways. Be very careful with onions while you're chopping them because they are round. The juice tends to be very slippery and starts messing with your eyes. This is the vegetable that for students, if they're going to hurt themselves while learning how to use a knife, this is the one that they're going to do it on. Hey, our onions are all cut up. See how they're a nice fine piece? That way, again, we have nice onion flavor for our dish, but people tend not to like to bite down on large pieces of onion. So these will cook down soft, and you won't hardly notice they're in your dish. We'll add that to our container. And there is our prepared mirepoix. Thanks for joining me for Cooking with Carper, our first edition for Foods 1. I hope this was useful and educational, learning how to use a knife. Make sure to follow along with the next video to see how these vegetables get used in the quick stir fry.